Hello and welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll go ahead and get right to our look at hazardous weather. We have a high wind warning out still for the eastern Alaska range. That's in effect until 6 a.m. on Thursday. Looking at gusts up to 70 miles per hour through the eastern Alaska range, which is going to make travel difficult, especially for high profile vehicles through the passes there, as well as potentially bring down some trees or tree limbs and blow the snow around if there is any that's still light enough to be blown around in the area, making visibility more difficult as well. In addition to that high wind warning, we have 2 wind advisories in effect for the Denali area as well as for the Delta Junction, Deltana, and Tanana Flats areas. That's going to be for wind gusts up to 60 miles an hour. But with those gusts to 60 miles an hour, again, travel concerns, especially for high profile vehicles, as well as the potential for some tree limbs to fall in those areas. The wind advisories are also in effect through the night tonight. And finally, down on the Kenai Peninsula in the western Prince William Sound area, we have an avalanche warning in effect. Now, that's actually issued by the Chugach National Forest Avalanche Center, not the Weather Service itself, but we help to get their message out, so you will see it on our map if you go to our website at weather.gov/Alaska. That is going to be for high avalanche danger for the western Chugach and Kenai Mountains. It's actually in effect through the night tonight into Thursday morning, but may be extended by the Avalanche Center, so keep an eye on that, if you will. That high avalanche danger is going to be in backcountry areas, especially on slopes steeper than 30 degrees, but there's also concern for roof avalanches. So if you are in the areas of Girdwood, Portage, Turnagain Pass, Seward, those areas, make sure that you're keeping an extra eye out for any potential for avalanches. Heading into our satellite imagery, we can see our low pressure system spinning over the south portion of the mainland with clouds expanding northward from it. At the very beginning of the satellite imagery, we can see that kind of what we call a comma head shape to that low pressure system, making it a mature low pressure system and dissipating towards the end of the satellite image. And then we see some clouds moving into the Aleutians, as well as we have a front coming into that area. Looking at our surface chart, we can see that low pressure system near South Central, and it is weak at best at this point, 1008 millibars, with a dissipating occluded front off to its north. That's going to be just enough to create a little bit of rain in the low elevations and snow in the higher elevations for South Central, and then snow spreading across some of southwest of the state all the way up to the eastern north slope through the interior. We also have some snow showers behind it across the Alaska Peninsula, and then with that system coming into the Aleutians, some snow and rain into the western Bering. As we head into tonight, that low pressure system over South Central continues to move north and weaken. It'll still bring some additional light snow to much of the mainland, as well as those windy conditions into the Alaska Range area that we talked about earlier. We have high pressure behind it, and then behind that, another warm front out over the Bering Sea that's going to be bringing some additional precipitation to portions of the Aleutians. For Thursday, that low over the mainland dissipates. We have high pressure building in from the north, but we'll still have one more day with some chances of precipitation across the central interior, stretching down into the Alaska Peninsula. Also, some rain and snow chances for the northern panhandle, but generally dry for the west coast and much of the Aleutians for Thursday. And finally, Friday, that high pressure really takes hold. So dry across almost the entirety of the state with just a couple of exceptions. One of those most notably being the Chukchi Sea coast, where we're looking at the potential for some snow, but also concern for blowing snow with winds picking up there on Friday, as well as winds picking up across the Bering Strait area from the western Seward Peninsula, also down to St. Lawrence Island. So keep an eye out and make sure that you have the chance for lower visibilities in your plans if you plan to travel in those areas on Friday. Taking a look at our temperatures, we're going to do the same thing that we did yesterday. We're going to see how this goes. Let us know how you like it with staying in one geographical area through the whole forecast before moving to another geographical area. So we're starting with the southern and southeastern portion of the state. Low temperatures for Thursday morning. We are looking at mainly 30s with upper 30s in the Panhandle to mid 30s in South Central, and some low 30s to even a 29 there at Dillingham across the Alaska Peninsula. For Thursday afternoon, expect some warming temperatures into the 50s for the southern Panhandle with 56 there at Ketchikan, 40s for the northern Panhandle, 42 there at Haines, also 40s for South Central and the Prince William Sound area. You've got 45 at Valdez, and then also 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Heading into Friday morning, low temperatures, a little bit cooler. So we're looking at mostly 20s and 30s across South Central and the Alaska Peninsula area. We've got 25 there at Talkeetna. But for the Panhandle, a little bit warmer as usual, temperatures in the upper 30s to around 40. And for Friday afternoon, we'll see our warmest temperatures so far in this couple of days period, with temperatures potentially reaching 60 degrees near in the southern Panhandle. We've got 59 in the forecast there at Petersburg, and 40s to around 50 for South Central, 48 at Valdez, 50 for Talkeetna. Still in the low 40s though for the Alaska Peninsula, as we have 43 there at King Salmon. For Thursday morning, for the northern side of the state, we're looking at single digits to around 0 for the North Slope, 20s for the interior, 27 there at Fairbanks, and some teens for the west coast. So we have 14 there at Savunga for Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, we've got temperatures in the teens to 20s for the North Slope, 13 there at Utqiagvik, 20s for the west coast, a couple of 30s there with 33 at Nome, and 40s to even 50 with 50 there at Fairbanks across the interior. Friday morning, we're looking at a little bit warmer, just slightly across the North Slope with temperatures in the single digits to just around 10 degrees. We've got teens again for much of the west coast and 20s across the interior. And then Friday afternoon, very similar temperatures across the interior with temperatures in the mid to upper 40s, but definitely warmer for the North Slope, as we've got even up to 24 degrees there at Utqiagvik for Friday afternoon. Switching to the southwestern portion of the state for Thursday morning, it's looking chilly along the southwest coast with 23 there at Emmenak, 24 at Bethel. We've got 30s mostly for the Aleutians for Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, a cool day across the board with temperatures not even reaching freezing for portions of the YK Delta area. We've got 30 there at Makoriuk for Thursday afternoon. 40s for the western Aleutians in particular, though, with even 48 degrees there at Adak. For Friday morning, looking at temperatures in the 20s for the southwest, the YK Delta area, 21 there at Emmenak, 24 at Bethel, and 20s into the 30s for the Aleutians for Friday morning. And then finally, Friday afternoon, we are looking at 30s and 40s across the board.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to a look at your aviation forecast, starting with flying weather on Thursday morning. We're looking at IFR conditions across the northern Gulf and Prince William Sound, stretching up into the western interior and up into the northeastern Brooks Range, as well as IFR conditions along much of the west coast and portions of the central Aleutians. As we look at Thursday afternoon, we do see improvement across much of the mainland, at least to MVFR, but IFR conditions continuing across the west coast, as well as much of the Prince William Sound area and stretching down into the north side of Kodiak Island. For Friday morning, we see IFR conditions moving a little bit more inland from the west coast to the western interior, stretching across much of the south side of the Brooks Range as well as the Chukchi Coast. And then IFR conditions continuing in the northern Gulf, especially that area between the southern tip of Kenai Peninsula and down through the northern part of Kodiak Island. Also seeing more IFR conditions developing across the western and central Aleutians on Friday morning. But by Friday afternoon, we do see improvement for many areas with VFR conditions across most of the mainland, just some spotty MVFR conditions across the mainland. And then we'll see IFR conditions just along the south and eastern side of Kodiak Island, as well as for much of the Aleutians, those continuing IFR conditions there. Pass conditions on Thursday, Anaktuvuk Pass and Adigan Pass both MVFR on Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill Passes both starting the day Thursday IFR but improving to MVFR by Thursday afternoon. Rainy Pass also starting IFR but improving to MVFR Thursday afternoon. Windy Pass not coming out of MVFR through the day on Thursday. Isabel Pass starting the day MVFR on Thursday but improving to VFR Thursday afternoon. Mentasta Pass looks VFR all day on Thursday. Tanita Pass looking like MVFR conditions all day on Thursday. Portage Pass starting out IFR Thursday morning but improving to MVFR Thursday afternoon. And Chilkoot and White Passes both looking to stay MVFR through the day on Thursday. Taking a look at our freezing levels, we see a similar pattern to what we saw yesterday for today. So looking at Thursday morning, we have two areas of warm air, one coming in from the southeast over the Panhandle with freezing level there ranging from about 2,000 to greater than 8,000 feet across the southernmost Panhandle, and then the other area of warm air coming in over the Aleutians, also ranging from about 2,000 to just greater than 8,000 feet, going from east to west across the Aleutians. For icing, we have a large area of isolated moderate icing stretching all the way from about the Alaska Range and southwest down through the Alaska Peninsula and into the Aleutians. For the mainland portion of that area, we're going to see isolated moderate icing above about 7,000 feet. And for the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians areas, we'll see isolated moderate icing above about 4,000 feet. Our jet stream is impressive, stretching all the way from the Kamchatka Peninsula of Russia across eastern Russia and then dipping back down right over the west coast of Alaska and down into the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula. So for the Alaska portion of that, we've got northerly winds ranging from about 115 knots to 150 knots across the west coast and into the Alaska Peninsula. Also a secondary jet streak with winds out of the south stretching across the northern Gulf and into the Alcan area, 90 to 100 knots out of the south there. At 9,000 feet, once again, we see our strongest winds around a high pressure system centered in the Aleutians at this level. So southwest to westerly winds across the western Aleutians and eastern Russia, anywhere from 45 to about 80 knots there. And then a secondary peak in winds peaking at about 65 knots out of the north over the central and eastern Aleutians. At 3,000 feet, once again, our strongest winds are over the western Bering out of the south and southwest, peaking 55 to 65 knots with really not a whole lot of wind to speak of over the mainland or even the Panhandle at 3,000 feet on Thursday. And finally, for turbulence, we have some considerable moderate turbulence over the eastern interior, just from about south of the Yukon Flats down to the Alaska Range. That's going to be below about 10,000 feet. Another small area over south central, and then some over the Wrangell St. Elias Mountains as well. And then also considerable moderate turbulence below 3,000 feet for much of the Aleutians on Thursday.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snyder, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
Tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major, usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline. So tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific's tsunamis.
Wow, okay.
On the Aleutian Trench. And it's where the Pacific Plate is subducting underneath the American Plate. And we produce some very large, great quakes. And of course, the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk. And then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I mean, I won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know
You can't.
better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
Very good.
near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami, and then of course the landslides in southeast. It's even more intense because we can't.
Shorter warning time.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So if you feel shaking, and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold, and you need to start counting slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So 1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you can count anything you like. And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps. Especially helps kids, but it'll help your psyche.
So you don't speed up because you're getting stressed out.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean. Right. This is important if you're next to the ocean. If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place under cover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles. You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise. So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had inundation up to 10 miles.
Right.
So.
And that was a big quake.
That was a big quake.
So you have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
To 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate.
Okay.
And that is, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow. Right.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide. And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving. So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in '64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing? Not
guaranteed. It might go out, it might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind, but that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead. So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise, get out of there. And if it goes out really fast, get out of there. You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or pick up fish or shells or, you know, so. And it should feel weird, You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe. Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out.
Right.
And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping at night near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore.
That would be different.
That would be weird. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock grains. So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird.
Okay.
Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what the risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business?
Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC.
NTWC.
The URL is not intuitive at all.
Okay.
There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready.
Okay.
And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program.
Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay.
And that's AKwx.
AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth and how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And we're back with a look at your marine forecast, starting with the sea ice edge. As far as sea ice goes on the west side of St. Matthew Island, the winds have been out of the north and they've been pushing the sea ice edge further south. But on the east side of St. Matthew Island, the winds have been out of the south, pushing that sea ice edge further north. But over the next couple of days, we're going to see a reversal in that. So on the west side of St. Matthew Island, we'll have southerly winds pushing that ice edge back north. And on the east side of St. Matthew Island, we'll see northerly winds pushing that ice edge a little bit further south. As we look at our winds and seas across the southeastern portion of the state, mostly light, 10 to 20 knots out of the southeast for the Gulf and out of the north for those inside waterways. Seas 6 to 8 feet across the Gulf and about 2 feet for the inside channels. As we head into Friday, we'll see a little bit of a switch with those Gulf winds going out of the north as well as those inside channel winds. 10 to 15 knots, so still relatively light winds and still in that 6-foot range for seas in the Gulf and 2 feet for those inside channels. Across South Central on Thursday, we're looking at winds 15 to 20 knots with seas 7 to 8 feet in the Gulf, 3 feet in Prince William Sound, and 2 to 3 feet for Cook Inlet. Heading into Friday, those winds lighten even a little bit more, 10 to 15 knots, generally some direction of northerly, whether that's a little bit northwesterly or a little bit northeasterly. Seas coming down in the Gulf to 5 to 6 feet, still about 2 to 3 feet for Prince William Sound and Cook Inlet. Heading over to the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas for Thursday, we're looking at winds generally out of the north, 15 to 25 knots, seas 7 to 8 feet on the Gulf side, and about 3 feet in Bristol Bay and 8 feet on the north side of the peninsula out in the Bering. Heading into Friday, we've got winds still in that 15 to 20 knot range, a little bit more northeasterly than due north, seas coming down to about 5 feet across the board. For the Aleutian chain, we're looking at winds on Thursday out of the north and west, 20 to 25 knots, and seas in that 6 to 9 foot range. Heading into Friday, we'll see the first impacts of our next system coming in, with winds turning southerly, especially for the western Aleutians, and picking up quite a bit to gales 35 to 40 knots, with seas 13 to 19 feet for the western Aleutians. Much calmer for the eastern Aleutians, winds still generally out of the north 15 to 20 knots with 5-foot seas there. For the west coast on Thursday, we have that northerly and northwesterly flow that we were talking about with sea ice edge on the east side of St. Matthew Island. But as we head into Friday, again, we'll see that reverse. So southerly flow coming into the west coast starting on Friday. Winds also picking up 20 knots in Norton Sound out to 30 knots just south of St. Matthew Island. For the Arctic coast, we've got 10 to 15 knot winds across the board on Thursday. But as we head into Friday, we'll see winds pick up a lot, especially in the Chukchi Sea, where we're looking at 35 to 40 knot winds out of the south and 10 to even as high as 20 knots along the north slope itself. Recapping our service charts and the weather that we're expecting the next couple of days. Tonight, we've got that weak low pressure system over the interior, bringing snow, light snow, all the way from the north slope down into south central and the Alaska Peninsula. Again, we have that high wind warning in effect for the eastern Alaska range and wind advisories for the Denali and Delta Junction areas as well. We also have that avalanche warning issued by the Chugach National Forest Avalanche Center for the eastern side of Kenai Peninsula. So keep those in mind if you have any plans to be out. As we head into Thursday, things calming down a little bit. Still some chance for snow across the central interior up to the north slope and the east side of the Alaska Peninsula, but high pressure in command with dry conditions for much of the Aleutians as well as the west coast. And Friday, that high pressure takes hold over most of the state, with the exception being those windy conditions along the Chukchi Sea coast, with the potential for blowing snow there as well as in the Bering Strait area. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.